Hello friends, welcome back to Digitalk. So as we know that WebLogic 14.120 has been released some time back, and along with that there are multiple other Fusion middleware stack, okay, also released with the 14.120 version, and SOA Suite is one of them. Okay, so after we are 12.214 version, now the SOA Suite has been released in 14.120 version. Okay, and there are certain 4 or 5 major enhancement in this particular version of SOA that I am going to explain in this version in this session. And along with that, there are certain information that is missing in the documentation of Oracle. Okay, when we say about some features, it has a dependency of on some other configurations. For example, you have a reference configuration domain in the SOA. Okay, many of the engineers are not aware about what exactly is the reference configuration domain. Okay, this is another enhancement from the Oracle in the SOA suite. It is not from 14.128. In fact, it is from 12.214 onwards. Okay, so now when you enable the domain and the reference configuration, okay, then there are certain features that is automatically enabled for you. Sometime it is good, sometime it is bad. Okay, it depend on the multiple factors. Okay, what you have been using in your environment, what kind of application you are using, what is the load in your application, what kind of a data that you are getting in your SOA system. So based on that, the reference configuration domain can be good or can be bad for your environment. Okay, so now the one of the feature that has been incorporated in the SOA suite 14.120 has a dependency on the reference configuration domain. So these are all things that I am going to explain in this session. Okay, so now the very first and important feature that has been released in 14.120, that now SOA Suite has an integration with the Apache Kafka adapter. Okay, so this Apache Kafka is an external or an open source messaging system. Okay, that you can use for the asynchronous communication. So if you have a client, or if you have a certain application that is utilizing the Apache Kafka, okay, so for that now the adapter has been released in 14.120. Okay, which can enable you to create an integration that connect to the Apache Kafka messaging system. So now this is one of the major enhancement in terms of the integration for messaging, specifically with the Apache Kafka adapter. Okay, so now this is part of the standard adapter that has been shipped with the Oracle SOA suite. Okay, where you will find the Apache Kafka adapter as well for integration with your application. Right. So this is the first major enhancement, and apart from that, for the on-premise SOA suite applications, okay, there is a hybrid integration that enable you to connect your on-premise SOA suite application with the cloud applications through Oracle Integration Cloud. So now OIC is an integration tool, cloud integration tool in from the Oracle. Okay, so you can utilize this OIC, which is the Oracle Integration Cloud, okay, to integrate your on-premise application or SOA Suite on-prem applications with the cloud applications. Okay, that means there are multiple applications that you are running in the cloud, and then you have a on-premise SOA Suite also running with the multiple SOA Suite components. Okay, and you want to integrate that with the cloud application. So for that, you can utilize the OIC. Okay, Oracle Integration Cloud. So for that, there are a certain process. That means OIC, as I said, it is a separate integration cloud product. So for that, you need to create certain kind of instances in the OIC cloud. Okay, and then once you configure your instances, then you get the client IP or the secure IP or APIs keys. Okay, to for integration with the on-premise application that you can configure with your on-premise SOA Suite application. So by this way, you can enable the integration, okay, with your SOA Suite applications with the cloud applications with the help of Oracle Integration Cloud. Okay, now third is REST enhancement that enable you to configure proxy port and proxy host for external REST points, right? So we know that SOA Suite is an integration tool, and apart from the integration, it has a multiple other features as well, like for the transformation. Okay, but specifically when we talk about the integration with the third-party services, or with the help of where you have integration with the multiple APIs, okay, where you are getting the data in and out from the SOA Suite. Okay, so now we have the option, we can configure the proxy port or proxy host, right? So multiple times, or we can say many times in an organization, specifically when we are in the cloud, okay, to access the external applications or to make the connectivity with the external applications, we need the proxy server and proxy port, right, to allow the connections. So that proxy port and this particular proxy host, now we can define directly in our composites. Okay, and let me show you this as well. So this is the enhancement that I am talking about. Okay, so that means you can configure your SOA Suite application directly to use proxy to call an external REST service, okay, with the following two parameters. So that means we have now two parameters. These are the property name we can directly define in the composites, okay, and with the help of this we can define our organization's proxy host and proxy port, and this can directly be enhanced or implemented in your composite application. So this is again one of the major enhancement, right, where we can define the proxy host and port directly in our SOA composite. This is the third integration. Now the fourth major enhancement is an option to view the auto purge job execution history in Oracle Enterprise Manager, right? So we know that in the SOA suite we can configure the purging of job, which is a very important and critical task in the SOA, to purge the database objects from the database tables, okay, which is not required. So for this purging, so far we were dependent on to run certain kind of a queries in a database to check the status of your purges. So now in from 14.12 onwards, we have option in the console as well, where we can check the execution history of job. Whatever the purge job that you have configured, you can check the status of that, whether what is the current status of that particular job. Okay, so let me show you this as well. So this is an option, purge history, that you will see in the 14.12 SOA Suite console, and there you can have a search criteria where you can give the from date to date, okay, we can give the job number, and then you can look for particular status, okay, and then you can look for the status from the console as well, what is the status of your job. So earlier till the prior version we were dependent on our database and queries as well. So that means now if you are a SOA admin and you do not have access to the database maybe, okay, then you can directly go to the console EM console, and then you can look for your purging job whatever you have configured from the console as well, right? So this is one of the other major enhancement, right? Now fifth one, this is very important, okay, this is I was talking about, this is specifically related with the reference configuration domain, RCD, okay, this is called the related with the reference configuration domain. So I will explain you what exactly is the reference configuration domain, so you will get some idea of that. Now what is the enhancement here? When the payload size of the SOA composite exceeds the maximum limit, the payload is rejected and notification email sent to the configured users. Okay, so what happened, whatever the REST APIs that we configure in the SOA suite, okay, and whatever the data that is in and out from your SOA with the help of APIs, okay, there is a payload size, the size of the data that is coming, right? So if that payload size exceed the maximum limit, okay, the maximum limit is 10 MB, and this is specifically for the reference configuration domain. So if it is exceed the maximum limit, okay, this payload will be rejected, and after rejection, a mail notification after configuration will be sent to the configured user as well that this particular payload has been rejected due to the large size. Now this is other major enhancement, okay, and let me explain you this as well in detail along with that reference configuration domain. Now this is the feature what I said, when the payload size of the SOA composite exceeds the maximum limit, the payload is rejected and a notification email will be sent to the configured users. Now this feature work only in the reference configuration domain, okay, so we have a two kind of a domain, okay, one is called the classic domain. Okay, so that means whatever the domain that we have been configuring so far or earlier, okay, this is specifically the classic domain. And second is called the reference configuration domain. And how it is configured and enabled, let me tell you. So reference configuration domain is enabled in fact from the 12.2.14 onwards. You can see here beginning with 12.2.14, you can create either a reference configuration domain or a classic domain on the template screen in configuration wizard during installation. So what we do when we configure the SOA, we do the installation of our Fusion middleware, and then on top of that we install the SOA suite. Then we create the domain with the help of configuration wizard. So when we run the configuration wizard, there we get the selection option to select the domain templates. And during domain template section, you will get the option, specifically the option for the reference configuration domain or a classic domain. Okay, so if you are going with the reference configuration domain, which is the default domain for the SOA marketplace option. Okay, we have different options for the SOA. If you are in the SOA suite marketplace, then reference configuration domain is automatically enabled for you. Okay, and this reference configuration domain guards servers from running out of memory, stuck thread, endpoint connectivity, and database issues. So that means this reference configuration domain, once you select this option, this template, so this is going to enable the reference configuration domain for you. That means it is automatically going to enhance certain performance tuning parameters related with the out of memory, stuck thread, endpoint connectivity, database issue. So it will automatically enable the multiple features in the backend for your domain. which will be completely different from your classic domain. Okay, so now these different kind of a parameters, as I said, this could be good for your environment or this could be bad for your environment, depend on the kind of application that you are running, the kind of a data that you are getting in your SOA suite. Okay, so there are multiple scenarios based on that. This configuration could be good or this could be bad for your applications. Okay, so now when you develop the application SOA project, okay, so during the developing a SOA project in reference configuration domain mode, okay, so when you develop the application, for that you also have a mode called reference configuration domain. That means you enable the reference configuration settings in the JDeveloper, so that new adapter that you create in the project will have special JCA endpoint properties defined in their source file. So that means once you enable this JCA reference configuration mode in your JDeveloper for developing your adapters, okay, then there are multiple other new options that will be enabled for you, okay, to build your application specifically considering the reference configuration domain, right? Now, how to enable that one or how it is automatically enabled? There is a parameter -d SOA dot reconfig dot enabled. This is equal to true by default in the marketplace, as I said. If this parameter is true, you can check for your set domain env, set domain dot env file, which is inside your domain bin. If it is true, that means you are using the reference configuration domain. If it is false, that means you are using the classic domain. So by this parameter, the reference configuration domain is enabled. And as I said, the maximum default payload size is 10 MB, which is specifically only for the reference configuration domain, not for the classic domain. And it is configured in the set SOA reference config env.sh. Okay, so this is the important configuration file of your SOA reference configuration domain. So this is the parameter which enable or disable the reference configuration domain in set domain env file. And this is the environmental file which contain the multiple different settings that is automatically enabled for you for the SOA reference domain. And what is the location of this file? Your middleware home, or you can say Oracle home, where you have installed your Oracle SOA suite. Then SOA common bin, and inside bin you will have this particular file. So you can look for this parameter file for the reference configuration domain configuration. So this is the important about what is the reference configuration domain, what is classic domain, how to enable and disable it one, what are the different configuration files that get activated when we configure the reference configuration domain, right? So now these are the important enhancement, okay, in your SOA suite 14.1.2.0. Let me quickly tell you, there is a new adapter Apache Kafka. You can enable your SOA integration, SOA with the Apache Kafka messaging system. You can enable your on-premise SOA suite application with the Oracle integration cloud. You can directly enable the proxy host and proxy port in your composites. Okay, you can see the status of your per job now from the enterprise manager console. And specifically in the reference configuration domain, you have the option where if any of the payload side exceeded the maximum limit of 10 MB, then you can configure an email notification which will be sent to the configured users. And this specifically related with the reference configuration domain, which I have already explained to you. So this is all about the new features in your SOA Suite 14.1.2.0. Thank you.